That is true.
Recording is now starting. Let me open up the slides again. And here we go. Can everyone see those slides?
Yes.
All right, I did my first job. Well, welcome everyone. Chris Natzke here, along with my good buddy JB Braden, and we're excited to share with you our webinar we've entitled "The 5 Biggest Mistakes Speakers Make from Stage." So it's our intention in this time that we've got together to give you some tricks and strategies, some tools that you can use for those of you that are speakers now or are aspiring speakers, how you can maybe avoid some of those common mistakes that we know that speakers make, as well as be able to up-level your speaking. So to give you an idea of what we're going to be covering over the next hour or so is we're going to first take a look at, help you identify the biggest mistakes that speakers make. And the reason that we feel very qualified to be able to share that with you is when we put this together, we realized we made all those mistakes ourselves. So we're speaking from experience. But you know, what you want to do is be able to learn from your mistakes and be able to grow. And so hopefully that's what we've done. Number 2, we're going to do, as I said, is share some strategies and tools to avoid these mistakes, or if you find yourself making those mistakes, how you can overcome those. And then finally, what we're going to do is we're going to share with you some next steps on how to become a world-class presenter with some programs and tools that we have available. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to turn it over to my good buddy, JB Braden, and have him introduce himself.
Thank you, Chris. Appreciate it. And I'm going to ask everyone if you'll go ahead and mute before we jump in there with the presentation. And then at the end, we'll have some Q&A and we'll have you unmute then. But for those of you who don't know me, I haven't had a chance to meet you in person. I'm JB, been speaking for over 20 years. Been coaching speakers for half that time. And it's my passion, it's my goal to help people become great at what they do. And a lot of times you can do that through speaking. It builds the confidence. My company is Beyond the Field Coaching, and I just love working with my clients and people who want to improve their lives, whether it be the entrepreneurs that we work with, helping them create their signature presentation, or CEOs or leaders that we work with. Love what we do, and the clients that we have, and helping them just grow their business to extraordinary heights.
Excellent. Thanks, buddy. And a little bit about me. My name is Chris Natzke. Most of you might know me from the martial art world. So I'm an 8th degree black belt and former national Taekwondo champion. And my business is called Black Belt Leadership Speaking and Coaching. And I got into speaking a little bit differently, I think, than most. I actually started being in front of a room at a very young age as a martial arts instructor or an assistant. And then I went into the corporate world and had a lot of speaking that I did there. In sales training. And then when I left the corporate world and opened up my own school back in 1995, I had 6 schools in a 2-mile radius of me, competitive martial arts schools. So I needed to find a way to, kind of let myself stand out amongst the crowd. And I did that through speaking. I did that by, going to grade schools, middle schools, high schools, service organizations, anyone basically who would fog a mirror that would ask me to come in and speak. And what I was able to do is use speaking to build my business. And so within 5 years, I had one of the largest martial arts schools in the state of Colorado. And then what came from that is offers to continue to speak in other venues. And after that, started getting paid to speak professionally. And that's what I do now. So both JB and I are really great proponents of people being able to use speaking not only as a means of sharing an important message that they have, but also being able to promote their businesses if that's what they choose. So that's a little bit about me. And we are now going to go on to the 5 biggest mistakes that speakers make from stage. And as I said before, we feel very qualified to be able to share this because we've made all these mistakes plus some more. But the fact of the matter is when you are in a speaking environment, you have that opportunity to share your message. Some of those learnings that you get, if you're growing from those mistakes you make, they actually really become, great stepping stones for you to take your speaking to another level. So I'm going to turn it over to JB for our first biggest mistake that we've called, they don't communicate the purpose of their presentation. So buddy, why don't you take it away?
You got it. Thanks, Chris. And our goal here is just to make sure that we share some knowledge with you and hopefully help you prevent some of these mistakes that we made. Sometimes we make mistakes so we can help people not make those same mistakes. So the first mistake, as Chris said, is they don't communicate. Speakers don't communicate their purpose of the presentation. And a lot of speakers make this mistake and they're unaware of it. And it can be avoided before you even get on stage, okay? Basically, we like to ask the question with all of our clients, what's the purpose of your presentation? And let me give you an example why this is so important. You see, I've been speaking for over 20 years, like I said, and I've been coaching since about 2016. And when I started my coaching business, and naturally, what I wanted to do is use speaking to help grow my business. So I would get out there and I would speak and I would inspire the hell out of people. I mean, I'm good at that. I did a good job of it, but I wasn't converting. It was a few reasons. And one of them is my presentation wasn't crafted the right way. It was crafted to inspire an audience, okay? It was crafted to engage and educate the audience, but it didn't have certain techniques to convert the audience. And it wasn't until I was connected with one of my speaker coaches that he shared this with me and he helped me learn how to craft a presentation in the right way. So this mistake alone can be avoided before you even hit the stage by asking yourself the question, what's the purpose of my presentation? And being clear of that presentation, the purpose. Because Chris, tell the folks what happened if you're not clear of this.
You know, the first thing I'd say, it doesn't mean that you still don't engage and inspire people. You still do that, but you want to be able to make sure that you're honing in on the right audience and the right message. And what many people do is they either have the right message for the wrong audience, the wrong message for the right audience, or the wrong message for the wrong audience. They're just not really clear about who they want to connect with. And so understanding who you really want to speak to and or being able to change your presentation or up-level it or tailor it to what the needs are to the audience you're speaking, still keeping the integrity of your content, but being able to mold it to be able to meet their needs is something that a lot of speakers aren't able to do. And also, when you don't have an intention for where you're going, you can end up speaking, everyone claps, and you go pick up your stuff and you go away, and you're not able to, if you're intentional of maybe having them be a coaching client of you or hire you for another talk, all those opportunities go away.
Oh, exactly. I love that, Chris. That's so true. So being clear on the purpose of your presentation, and along with understanding the problem that you solve for your target audience. A lot of people miss that, because when you understand that problem, then you can communicate effectively. And that creates a lot of great things as far as connection, which we'll talk about later. But also another problem that people miss, which affects the communication, is they don't have a clear call to action. They don't know what they want their audience to do after they hear the presentation. And that's a very, very important thing. Okay, do you want them to do something different? Do you want them to interact with you, sign up for something, buy something? And being clear on that call to action or that purpose of what you want your audience to do is very important. And understand this, going back to what Chris said, a world-class presentation includes all of those things we talked about. It includes the inspiration, the engagement, the education, the entertainment, and the conversion. And so those are some key things that you can do before you hit the stage to avoid this first problem, so that you can communicate effectively the purpose of your presentation. So Chris, let's move to the next one, and I'll let you tee that one up, brother.
All right, I'm going for it here as soon as there we go, my slide moved over. So the second biggest mistake, as we see it, is people try to be someone they're not. And, you know, one of the things that I've learned is that being on stage is one of the most vulnerable and transparent places we can be at. And if we aren't ourselves, if we are trying to be someone different than we really are, an audience may not be able to identify it. They may not be able to verbalize that something's off, but they'll sense it. And what will happen is it'll kind of act as a block for us being able to connect with an audience. When I first started speaking, this is back about 15 years ago, and I was working with a coach, and he kept having me, as I was up speaking, I thought I needed to have this, you know, this beautiful melody in my voice and have these great hand gestures and be able to speak without making a mistake and be smooth and classy up on stage. And he kept saying, stop, go back, Try it again. Be more animated. And man, I got to tell you, I was getting frustrated with him because I'd be in the middle of my smooth crooning as I saw it, and then he'd make me stop and do it again. But what he was doing is he was trying to pull out something he knew that was there naturally for me. See, all of a sudden it clicked for me. And when I was most effective as a martial arts instructor, and as I have been most effective, it's when I've been engaging, when I've been excited, when I've been animated. That's how I connected with students. That was my natural way of being. And I wasn't allowing myself to do that when I first started speaking. When I learned that message, things started to change. All of a sudden, I started getting more speaking, in invitations to come and speak. The feedback I was getting, oh, he's engaging, he's funny, he's this, he's that. All the things I wasn't getting before because I wasn't really being who I was. And so the big thing there is get a good understanding of who you are and what your voice is. And regardless of whatever program you've done, whatever book you've read, whatever, if it feels right to be that person, make sure that's who you're being on stage. JB, what do you think about that?
I think it's extremely important, Chris. I did, when I first started, the majority of my speaking was in front of high school students. And you try to show up and be someone you're not, they'll call you out real quickly, right? And so I learned that early on in my career. Show up, be authentic, be who you are. And I actually learned it before I even hit the stage. I remember being in one of my first trainings and I'm doing my presentation, I'm going through and I'm nailing it, right? I get to the end of that presentation and this is a lesson I'll never forget. My trainer, he looked at me, he said, you did good on the presentation. Did you realize you didn't smile the entire time? That's a small thing that I'll never forget, because when I smile, it creates that connection, okay? It shows people a little of my personality, and it shows people a little of your personality. And so that's what we're talking about. Don't be afraid to allow your personality to come out on stage, because guess what? That's the reason why you're on stage, so the audience can experience you. And that's the beauty of being able to speak from stage, because the audience get to experience you. They get to experience your energy, and they get to experience what it would be like to interact with you and to work with you. And so that's why it's so important that we make sure that we're not trying to be someone else that we're not.
That's right. In fact, I just came back. I was speaking at a conference this past weekend in Dallas, and there were a number of other speakers on the main stage. And I got to tell you, maybe there were 6 or 7 speakers during the whole weekend. And JB, every one of them had a different and unique style. And it didn't make one better than the other, right? And if one of those people would have, say the person in front of them was super funny and they tried to be that person, they would have fallen flat, but Absolutely. They didn't. And we got value from them because they were being who they needed to be.
Absolutely. So right important, Chris.
All right. So should we move on, JB?
I think let's do it, brother.
All right. Let's go on to number 3. Tell them what happens.
All right. Number 3.
Properly prepare.
I'm not going to ask you how many have fallen into this trap, right? Fail to prepare properly. And listen, here's what it comes down to. Once you've got your presentation designed the right way, okay, with a clear target audience, and then you understand the problem that you communicate to your audience, now it's time to do what? Practice, 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 and repetition is what's going to get you there. I love what Malcolm Gladwell said. It takes 10,000 hours to master anything, okay? I mean, Chris and I, we sometimes we apologize to people because we make this look real easy, but it's not easy. It takes a lot of practice, right? And so practice. I mean, we just had somebody text us today. One of our clients text me and he said, what's the best way to practice a new presentation? I said, well, you want to practice, and practice and repetition is a key. But one of the things that you can do, and I've learned this helps me as well. I'll break that presentation into sections, okay? So if you can break it into 3 sections, and then practice that first section over and over and over and over and over until you can nail it. And then go to the next section, and then do that with each section as you break it out. So it really comes down, Chris, as you know, to your learning style, all right? Some people like to memorize, right? I was blessed with a good memory, and part of that was I was trained as an actor in high school and college. I took acting, so I learned how to memorize a script. And so I can then memorize what I want to say and then take it and put life into the words. And so for me, that's a trick that I use.
Yeah. Well, and one thing, this is coming from my martial art background, is we have basically 3 distinct learning styles.
Yeah.
We either learn visually, kinesthetically, or auditorily. So whichever is your main style, that's what you really want to lean into. And one of my other instructors and mentors always said that practice doesn't make perfect, practice makes permanent. So what you need to do is play with what are the best learning styles and preparation styles for you. For me, I'm much more of a visual learner. So even if I'm going to be giving a talk where I'm not going to have slides, I'll literally put the slides together. And in PowerPoint, what you can do is you can actually print your presentation out with, say, as many as 9 slides on one piece of paper. And I will literally just look at those and rehearse those and put little bullet points of things that I want to point out and speak about at each one of those slides. And again, I may not even use those slides, but it basically resonates in my mind because I pick things up visually. The other thing is, you know, I think that we're much more impactful and much more effective when we do our learning in short bursts versus trying to do sustained long hours of preparation. So what do I mean by that? I read a study years ago where it was looking at learning styles for kids getting ready for tests in high school. And they found out that the best way to learn was not the 3, 4, 5 hour cramming the night before the test. It was taking some time each day, maybe 5, 6 days before the examination, to spend maybe 30 minutes, an hour practicing and rehearsing. And that's what I do before I have a talk. I know that some people like to stand up in front of a mirror and do that. That's never worked for me. What I do is I do a lot of visualization. So I'll literally lay down on a bed. I'll see my presentation in my mind. And I not only think about the things that I'm going to be saying and presenting, but I also rehearse how the audience is responding to me, right? You know, when I tell a joke, are they responding to the joke? When I do something, how are they responding? Are they engaged, etc.? I visualize all of that before I ever take the stage. So by the time I'm up there, it's like I'm just experiencing it for the 2nd or 4th time because it's already been happening in my mind.
Oh man, I love that, Chris. And you want to practice the fundamentals, okay? You want to practice the basics of speaking, your pauses, okay? Your transitions. Like Chris said, your jokes, your ad-libs, your staged movement, especially if it's the first time you're doing that presentation for the first time. You want to practice, okay, where am I going to stand? Or what side of the stage do I want to stand when I make this point? Practicing those little things that people forget, okay? And the other thing, and Chris, we teach this in our workshop a lot. You need that opening story. Practice that cold. You know to the minute how long it takes you to do that opening story and that close and that closing story, right? And so practice all of those things because we know when you practice, and even if you've practiced it over and over, and let's just say you have a momentary blank when you hit the stage, if you've practiced it enough, it's going to come back to you. Chris and I both experienced that.
Oh man, you know, just a little bit on that, JB. I'd like to say that if somebody came into your room 2 o'clock in the morning, shook you out of a dead sleep and said, "Tell us your signature story," you'd be able to say, "I started my martial art training in 1973. I was a short little chubby kid who was enamored." You know, that's my story. So I've done it so much. And what's so great about that for me, and I think JB has the same experience, is when you start off with that story, and it's almost like you're into rhythm. It's like putting the flash drive in and reading the program. As soon as you get into that story, then the rest of it is downhill from there. That's how it is for me anyway. Same for you, JB?
Oh, absolutely. That's a great point. And the other thing before we transition to that last one is one key point that we like to teach is videotape yourself doing your presentation. Videotape is a great learning tool. Okay, for making sure that you have the right expressions at the right time, that you're not smiling when there's a serious story to be told. You know, those little things that people don't think about.
Absolutely. Well, we talked a little bit about stories already, but that's going to be our 4th one, buddy. So let's go to that. And it's going to be that the 4th biggest mistake is people talk about an event rather than tell a story. And so we've already kind of alluded to it already. That beginning, opening signature story of any talk is one of the most powerful things we can do. As I said, I was at a conference this weekend and there's some really great speakers, but there's one in particular I remember listening to her, and she had great content, great stage presence, but she didn't use any stories during her 30-minute talk. And I remember I was just making notes going, oh my God, I wish she'd take our class, right? Because she could have been so good if she would have been able to tell a story. And why is that important? Well, telling a story connects us with that right side of the brain, that emotional side of an audience. Because when they hear a story, they'll most likely connect with something that's similar in their life, and it helps bridge the gap and create a connection with you and the audience. And one of the biggest times this was a lesson for me is this is 10, 12 years ago. I just started speaking, and I had been invited here in the Denver area to be part of a mastermind group by one of my mentors. And he had 3 groups that were going on within his organization. And he asked me to visit all 3 of those groups and give a 30-minute presentation. And I don't even remember what it was. It was a business-related presentation. And he wanted me to get to know everyone. So I went to every one of those groups and I gave the presentation. And at the end, we did a question and answer. Now, in 2 separate groups, with 2 separate people, there were people that had heard me speak before. And when we went to the Q&A in 2 separate groups on 2 separate days by 2 separate people, they both asked me the exact same question. Tell us the story about the kid in the wheelchair. Now, the kid in the wheelchair is a story about one of my students that I taught that was in a wheelchair, and I use it as one of my signature stories in many of my talks. And as soon as they asked that question, I was like, wow, it totally hit me. They probably didn't care about any of my content. They wanted to hear the stories. And if you think about it in our own lives and in our own history, the greatest teachers are the ones that taught through story. And so being able to have great stories within your presentation is one of the best things I think you can do to take your speaking to that next level. JB, what do you think?
Absolutely, Chris. And not only being able to tell a story, but tell it effectively. That's the most important thing, because like you just said, Chris, a lot of people don't understand the difference between telling a story and talking about an event, okay? Because when you tell a story, then you bring people into the scene, so to speak, right? Okay, if you describe what something smells like, they're right there with you, right? If you talk about it was a cold, chilly day, they're right there with you. They can feel that. And so the art of storytelling takes practice so you can bring people into the world that you're describing. And one of the ways that I got really good at this, I learned this years ago, Chris. It was one of the greatest techniques one of my trainers ever taught me. Said, learn the story, and then the best way to practice it is find a friend, take them out to dinner for coffee or whatever, sit across the table from them and just tell that story. Like it's conversational.
It's
right.
Brilliant.
Yeah, just like it's a conversational story,
Yes.
you know, and you're sharing that thing with them over a glass of wine or coffee or whatever's your flavor, right? But then as you get better at that, and then you ask them, well, you know, can you give me some feedback? Yeah. Right. And then how did you feel when I shared that story? But for me, it was one of the best ways to learn how to effectively tell a story.
I think that's brilliant, buddy. And, you know, because the thing of it is what we found in our courses with people who are new speakers, and we challenge them to bring a story, they want to give every specific detail about this step and that step. And sometimes less is more. Yes. So if you're sitting across a friend at a dinner table, at a coffee shop, whatever, and you're telling a story, that's probably the exact same way that you may want to do it, because again, it's about a part of connection. It's not just about pushing data out. It's about welcoming them into your world, right? And when you're doing that, you're creating that closeness and that connection to an audience, and then they trust you. And then they want to listen to more of what you have to offer, and it brings them into your world. Yeah. So are we ready for number 5, JB?
Yeah, Chris, what we just talked about leads directly into it. So let's jump into it, brother. The number 5, the last one we want to talk about is they don't deliver a talk that captures, connects, or closes. We've seen this with a lot of speakers. How many of you have been in a presentation and you just felt disconnected from the speaker because they did nothing to make sure they were engaging and connecting with you? And one of the key things to do that, and we've already just talked about this, the first thing we do is learn how to tell an effective story, okay? But understand why the story is effective. Because first of all, it creates connection with the audience, right? It creates that connection. and also creates the inspiration, but it captures their attention, as Chris was saying earlier. And so using stories to capture their attention and create that connection is very important. Okay. The other thing, eye contact, smiling. Remember, I talked about smiling earlier. Okay. When you're smiling at your audience at the appropriate time, they feel that engagement. They can feel that connection, right? And so those are also very important things that we like to talk about and do. And Chris, one of the things that both of us like to do is involve the audience, whether we bring them on stage, okay, or whether we do little tips and tricks to help them engage with each other. Those are great ways to keep the audience connected and capture their attention as well.
Absolutely. Well, I'll give you two little things about that, JB. One of the things that I attempt to do anytime I speak is I look to get to that venue long before I am ever going to speak, and if possible, even connect with people as they're walking in the room, right? So I don't want to wait to build rapport with the audience members as soon as I'm introduced on stage, because now I have to use those first couple of minutes to build up that rapport. I'll go to conferences early. I'll sit and schmooze with people. I'll ask them what the issues that are going on in their companies and their organizations, et cetera. If it's appropriate, I'll ask them if I can share a story that they might have shared with me on stage. Hey, I was talking with Dave and he was talking about this. I'm creating that connection. And then the other thing that I do, and this just came kind of naturally for me, JB, because I do martial arts. So I would bring people up on stage and do martial art moves, right? And I use it as a means. I don't just do it to do it. I do it as a means of anchoring the points that I want to make on stage. But when I get feedback from audiences, that's some of the best feedback that I get is they loved it when I brought someone up on stage. It keeps people engaged and it makes them feel like they're part of the program. It makes them feel, particularly when they see, not only if they're up there, but if they see one of their friends, one of their coworkers up there doing well, et cetera, it brings the group closer together as well. So being able to engage an audience in either participation, in questions and answers and having them answer back, all the types of things. When you're speaking, it's just not about pushing out information. It's about having that conversation with an audience and making sure that you're not just connecting to one person, but you're connecting to individuals one at a time so that they're all feeling that you're in that conversation with them.
Oh, that's great stuff. Hey, I'm going to give you another one, Chris. And I learned this one early in my career. When look at the words that you say, right? For instance, where in your presentation, instead of saying I or you, can you say we? Okay. That creates a great connection with you and the audience, because now they don't feel like you're talking at them, but you're communicating and having a conversation with them. And so that's a small little thing that you can do to create that connection, just by finding places in your presentation where you can say we instead of I or you. Okay. So for instance, a lot of times I've said before, we all make mistakes, right? Instead of you make mistakes or people make mistakes, you say we all make mistakes. Now they feel like you're one of them. So that's a key little thing that you can do to create that connection. And then finally, closing. Okay, when it comes to closing a presentation, how do you do that, right? Well, Chris and I always say closing is not an event; it's a process.
That's right. What
we mean by that is you're closing throughout the presentation. Okay, right. If you have a call to action at the end of the presentation, then you're doing what? You're embedding. Okay, you're doing what we're using a technique that we call embedding. Okay, for instance, let's just say you have a workshop that you want the people to sign up for at the end of your presentation. Well, somewhere throughout your presentation, you're going to embed that you have a workshop. You may say something like, this is one of the things that I do with my participants at my workshop. And then you go on and on. Now they're thinking, oh, he's got a workshop. She's got a workshop. Okay. And if it's something you're selling, like a book, one of the great things you can do is embed that you have a book. And Chris has a brilliant way that he embeds that he has a book. Chris, I want you to share that jewel with our client, with our audience.
One of the things I do when I bring people up on stage, I will always give them a copy of my book as a thank you. And one of my mentors told me long ago is that people oftentimes don't buy your book because they want to read it as much as they want to take a part of you home with them. So what I'll do is when I bring somebody up on stage is I will thank them. I'll say, hey, Mary, thanks so much for coming up on stage and helping me out. You were a great sport. I'll tell you what, I'd like to share with you my latest book, Breaking Through. It's an Amazon #1 bestseller, and I'll literally place it over my heart. So people are seeing that's basically part of me. And then I'll say, and Mary, thanks so much. I'd like to give you this as a gift. And I have an autograph table in back. After we're all done here, why don't you come back and I'll be happy to sign it for you. So what did I just do there? I made the audience know that I had a book. I put it over my chest so they related it to me, right? It wasn't out here, it was out here, or it was right here. And then what I said is, come back to my autograph table. Oh, Chris has got an autograph table where his books are, and we can get a signed copy. So I just subtly embedded it. Everyone feels good. The person receiving it feels good. When I did this, my book sales doubled from the last talk that I had when I implemented the strategy. So there's my old tip for you there. That one's a free one, JB. I gave him that one for free. So
I love that. And what that does is at the end of your presentation, you're not doing a call to action, trying to get people to buy your book. You've already mentioned you have a book and you've already told them where they can go get it. And so it makes the close a lot easier when you can do that before you even get to the close. Good stuff, man. I love it. Absolutely.
So I'm hoping this has been helpful for everyone. You're probably asking yourself, well, we got these opportunities. They've been, hopefully you've been noticing, we've been embedding during the entire presentation because we do have a way that we can help you take your speaking to the next level. And it's a program that we devised that we call the Champion Speakers Academy. It's something that JB and I love to do. We love to train aspiring speakers. We love to train entrepreneurs who are looking to use speaking as a means of building their business. And we're in the midst of doing one of those programs right now, but we have another one coming up that we wanted to share with you. So how does it work and what you receive? Well, in the Champion Speakers Academy, the first thing we're going to help you do is help you gain clarity on who your target market is. So many people want to be a speaker and they have a message, but they're not really clear about who they want to deliver it to. So we take you through a process to get some absolute clarity as to who that audience is or audiences are. Next, what we help you do is we help you discover the problem that you solve and how to effectively communicate it. Most people are impacted or are incited by either having pleasure or avoiding pain. And if they're in pain about something, you can touch that pain point and help them see how you're the answer to their problem, if you will. It can dramatically increase your effectiveness in terms of either being hired as a speaker for another event or selling programs and services that you might have. Next is, it's so important to be able to craft a signature presentation that not only closes, of course, but also educates, inspires, entertains, engages, because you want to have those elements. You want to have people walk away from your talk going, wow, I got some great value from that, even if they choose not to work with you. I've had instances where people haven't worked with me, but they've recommended me to other audiences just because they enjoyed the presentation that I gave. So you're constantly, being able to expand your business from the stage. Also, learn some tools and techniques that'll transform your presentation to world-class and position you as an expert in your field. There are many speakers out there, if you will, but what we're going to help you do is find your unique selling proposition. What is it about you that makes you unique? And being able to leverage that, if you will, in a good way so that people are seeing you as the expert that you are. And then finally, there's much, much more. So, JB, why don't you tell them about how it works from a logistics standpoint?
Oh, absolutely. I'll do that. But I want to say this real quick, Chris. Whether you've been speaking for 10 plus years, a couple of years, or you're just thinking about speaking, this workshop can help you. Okay. Remember, I've been speaking for a long time. And then I learned how to convert. So no matter how long you've been speaking or have not been speaking, there's always something to learn to make you better. And Chris, I want to share with the audience a story that, one of our clients told us earlier today on our one-on-one coaching session. And he said this, he said, man, I've done a lot of speaking in front of a lot of groups, but some of the things, the techniques that you guys are teaching, every speaker needs to know. And so, I thought that was a great compliment that he gave us,
And
because
that's when
even
we
though
said,
he's
man,
been,
why didn't we record that? Yeah,
I
but
know, right?
he did say that. Yeah,
Exactly,
he did
because
say that, yeah.
he's been speaking a while, but he's still learning some things that he can incorporate in his presentation. And so we have the next one coming up this Friday, August 19th and 20th. It's a 2-day workshop, full day, 2 full days, where we're going to help you craft your signature presentation. Okay. On that first day, we're going to really help you put that thing together. And then on the second day, you get the opportunity to stand and deliver and practice and get feedback from Chris and I, get coaching on one-on-one, group coaching from us, as well as feedback from the other attendees in the audience. By the time you leave out of there, you're going to have a great presentation that you can go and you can deliver. Okay. And then we don't stop there. We want to make sure that you get everything that you need to be successful. So each participant in our workshop, they get 2 one-on-one coaching sessions with both of us, where we sit down, we help them continue to clarify the message, work on the story, create your sales plan, and all of the different nuances that you need to really make that a powerful, powerful presentation. And if anyone's on the call and you say, well, August 19th might be too late, I got a presentation coming up in June. Well, if that's the case, we do have one-on-one coaching program that we can tell you about as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And our intention is when you complete that workshop in August, you have a 25-minute presentation that you can go out and share immediately. Yep. Right? In fact, we encourage you that we always say the best way to create a presentation is to book one. So we actually encourage you to book a presentation so you have one, so that when you finish that workshop, you can go and deliver it. And what's so great about that is when you have that base 25-minute presentation, then if you got asked to speak for an hour, then you can build off of that. But what you have is this great framework, and you know that you can go anywhere and deliver that 25-30-minute presentation.
And you know what else is important, Chris, that I want to make sure that we share with our audience is because some people are like, well, I'm not sure I want to speak on stage right away. The signature presentation becomes an incredible tool in your marketing toolbox, okay? Because you can then take parts of it. For instance, once you get your story dialed in, maybe you're being interviewed on a podcast, and they ask the podcast guy, the podcast host says, hey, tell my audience about you. Well, you've got your story dialed in, and you can share that story, right? If you've got your content dialed in and you're doing a webinar or you're doing an interview, you can share a little bit of that content. And so being able to take parts of your presentation and use it on different platforms is also great, which is why we advocate having a signature presentation, because guess what? You may not ever use it on stage, not the entire presentation, some of you, but you'll use parts of it in different places.
Absolutely. It's so great you brought that up, JB. Last year I did 23 podcast interviews, and I had one last week. I've got another one next week. And I can guarantee you that during the course of those interviews, every one of those last year and every one I've done this year, I have used part of my signature story and signature presentation. Absolutely. I mean, it's like it's in my hip pocket. I can go to it at any time, and I can sound professional doing it, and I can bring value to the listeners at the same time.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, let's talk again, some of the benefits. As we said, you're going to help identify your customer avatar, clear and clarity on the purpose of your message, help you be able to bring story into not only your signature stories, but stories to help augment your key points that you're sharing, creating a presentation, again, that entertains and educates, and really allow you to have that so you can use it in whatever means that you need, whether it's to build your existing business, to be a speaker on stage and do that from a professional standpoint, or just to be able to be a much better interview or podcast guest, whatever you want to use it to be. We know that program can do it for you. So let me share with you a little bit about the logistics and how this all works from a pricing standpoint. So as JB said, our next presentation, our next seminars are going to be on August 19th and 20th here in the Denver area. And the cost of that 2-day program, as well as the 2 individual coaching sessions that you would get with us, is regularly priced at $24.97 or 3 monthly installments of $9.97. Now, we're all very appreciative of the fact that you're here with us today. And we also know that we're 4 months out and would love to have people enroll within that program early so we can make sure that we can have numbers we need to make it a beneficial program for everyone. So what we're doing is we're offering an early registration special. So if you register in this using the code 2022 CSA, that stands for Champion Speakers Academy, and you register by next Friday, the 6th, by midnight, you can save 50%. So the pricing of that goes from $24.97 to one payment of $1248.50 or 3 installments of $498.50. And you see the little QR code there, and all you need to do is pick up your phone. You just go to take a picture and it'll take you right to the sales page. Now, some of you might be going, wow, don't really know if this is a match for me. Don't even know if this is something I want to do, or if I want to invest in. If that's the case, and you still would like to have a discussion with us later on to talk about this over the next 2 weeks, we're making our calendars available. And Anza right now, thank you very much, Anza, is putting in the chat box a direct link to our calendar. So if you want to set up a 30-minute discovery call to see if this is a program that's a good match for you, we'd love to have that discussion with you. You'll also be receiving an email in about an hour after this is done, where I'm going to share the recording of this, and you'll have a place for you to register for an appointment with us as well.
Exactly. And the other thing I want to make sure everyone knows is the reason why we want people to go ahead and reserve their spot is because it's limited to 10 spots. Okay, we limit it to 10 spots simply because that's the most effective way to make sure everyone gets the attention they need for their signature presentation. And so, and it's going to fill up. So we want to make sure that you reserve your spot and reserve it as soon as possible, and then take advantage of the discount. Good stuff, Chris. Thank you, brother.
All right, very good. So with that being said, I'm going to take this down here right now, and I'll ask you guys if you want to unmute and see if you guys have any questions for us.
Chris,
Yes, Janice.
I want to make sure that you mention your workshop on the radio. And as I stated in the chat, I'll gladly advertise you guys' workshop until August.
Awesome. Thank you, Janice.
Thank you, Janice.
For those that don't know, Janice has a radio show she does every Friday called the Networking
Diva Hour Live.
And so she has people from all over the country that join. I've been on there several times, and I'll field questions from California and the Northeast. So I appreciate that, Janice. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you, Janice.
You're welcome.
Appreciate that.
Great
Chris,
presentation.
Thank you.
Chris and JB, thank you very much. Excellent presentation tonight. Really enjoyed it. Question I have for you is about the use of visual aids, handouts, slides, flip charts, whatever. Like, I've seen speakers speak just, from the hip with nothing around them. And then I've seen others use resources that they bring to the stage in some fashion. What are your recommendations about that?
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. That's great.
Well, you want me to go first on that, JB?
Yeah, you go first.
Yeah. David, I think that for the most part, I personally like to use slides only because I think that most people, I talked about those 3 learning styles before, and it really augment a presentation. That being said, simple is better. One of the things we talk about in our course is the person that puts the slide up and it's got paragraphs up there of script. And then they literally, there's a temptation then to read it, right? And so really what you want to do is, if you can, like, have one bold point on your per slide, and if you do have more than one, make sure they're very simple statements, etc. Also utilize pictures. One of the best books I ever read on this whole thing was How to Present Like Steve Jobs. Yep. And in all of his, he would just put up a picture of the iPhone, but he made sure that the colors and everything were right? But to make them super simple so that you're making an impact, because if people wanted to read your slides, you could send them to them, right? They want to hear you speak, not read slides.
I love that. And the great rule of thumb, David, is you want to capture all of the audience, okay? And there's a lot of different learning styles out there. So you want to make sure you have auditory, visual, and kinesthetic, okay, for all the audience out there. And so where in your presentation do you, even if you just want to do 5 slides or whatever the case may be, I've seen people do that. So where you have slides, I like to use videos in my presentation, okay, because that resonates with people. But think about that. It's very hard for some people to listen to a presenter that's all they're doing is talking with no visuals.
Yeah.
Because some people are visual learners and that's how they learn. And so, but if you want to be most effective and capture everyone in the audience, make sure that you have every single one of those learning styles in your presentation.
Absolutely. The one thing I'd add though, is even if you have the slides, know your presentation.
Know your presentation.
Know your presentation. I'll just share a quick story. One of the first talks 10, 12 years ago that I was doing out of state, I got invited to speak at a university in Utah. And it was held at a university. It was for the Lunch Ladies of Utah. I didn't know there was Lunch Ladies in Utah as an organization, but they had one. A lot of hairnets and aprons. But anyway,
Yes, sir.
so I get there and they had told me before that Jim was this great AV guy. Bring your computer. Jim can make anything happen. So I get there with plenty of time and I'm supposed to speak right at noon. I'm the luncheon speaker and I've got 200-300 people in the audience and Jim can't get my slides up. So now it's getting close to 12 o'clock. So I got to get going, right? So I said, that's all right. I'll just give it. So I start my presentation. I'm doing my thing. About halfway through the talk, I made some mundane point, but everybody started clapping and I'm going, man, I'm getting pretty good at this. And then I turned around and noticed that Jim, 30 minutes in, finally got my slides up, right? So I had a brief moment. Of thinking I was getting pretty awesome, but know your presentation even without your slides.
Yeah, and the point is you don't want to use your slides as a crutch, but it's a tool to enhance your presentation, basically.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great question, David. Thank you. Any other questions?
I have another if nobody else
Sure.
does.
Sure.
Yeah.
I'll jump in again. If you're giving a talk that has a lot of emotion and there's just a lot of passion that you're ready to like put on the table, right? It's an event or an experience or something that just is deep inside you. Sometimes the words we choose when we're describing a very emotional experience cannot be the words that you necessarily would use in everyday language, shall we say. And I'm talking about foul language that's sort of an exclamation point to just drive home a point. Like, is there a rule of thumb or a line in the sand, or is it just based on the audience and the comfort you have, or where do you use that effectively and where do you get yourself in trouble, I guess is my question.
Yeah.
Chris, I'm gonna take this because I know
Absolutely,
exactly what
buddy.
he's
Yeah,
talking
go for
about. Hey, David, I like to cuss. Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, me
And
too.
most people that know me know I like to cuss. But you know what? It comes down to knowing your audience. That's what it really comes down to. Okay. Because there's certain audience that I've spoken in, obviously teenagers, I don't, right? Okay.
Right.
But even in professional settings. So it really comes down to knowing your audience. And that's why one of the things that Chris and I do is we get there early and we interact with the audience. Okay. So that's really what it comes down to, right? Because because I'll give you an example. I've seen this before where there's a speaker. I think, Ansel, you may have told me this. There's a speaker that was speaking and she was in front of an audience of Christians. And she kept dropping the F-bomb. Not the place to do that, right?
Yep.
And so you just really got to know your audience. And then if you're in an audience where it's not appropriate to drop an F-bomb, then how else can you still bring that same emotion?
Right.
You just figure that out.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I was going to say the exact same thing, JB, is obviously number one, know your audience. David, if you're speaking in front of a bunch of realm guys, you can probably, do whatever you want to do in terms of languaging. They'll accept that. If you're in a professional setting, not so much. The other thing that comes present for me on that is when you're telling emotional stories, make sure that it's okay to show emotion and it's okay to have it right on the surface. It's okay to even get a little choked up when you're up there speaking about it, but you want to make sure that you've done enough work that you can tell the story without totally losing it on stage too.
Yeah.
We've seen that, right, JB? We've seen it where someone just can't get through and it's like, okay, they're not ready to tell that story yet. It doesn't mean you can't get a little choked up, a little teary, whatever. That's okay. It's like the emotion is right on the surface, but you're still able to move through it. But if you're not able to do that yet, you probably need to hold off, in my opinion, using that story.
Yeah.
Got it. Yep.
Is that helpful, David?
Yeah, absolutely. 100%.
Awesome.
Ava, you have a question. You take yourself off mute, my friend.
Okay, and I think JB and I talked about this a little. You're talking about having a signature story. I have two specific markets. I'm a pastor. I work globally, and it's a Christian market. And then I have a business market.
Mhm.
Is it possible? Well, I think it is. I guess I'm asking for confirmation. Can you combine those together, or do they need to be kept separate?
You talking about the story that you use for both
Yes.
audiences?
When you're talking about a signature story, do you need two signature stories? I know one's going to emphasize, they're going to be different emphasis,
Yeah.
but
Uh,
it all comes, it's life. It all comes back to life.
Right. No, you could possibly use the same story depending on the story, right? Obviously, we'd have to hear the story to give you more information, but you can possibly use the same story for both audiences. It's just being able to know how to connect that story to the content of your presentation. Okay, that's the trick with it. Okay, that's
Because
one
I
of the
think that's
tricks.
where I'm really messing up.
Right, and that's one of the things that we teach is because you got to be able to tell a good story. We know that, but you also one of the things that we teach is how to connect that story to the content that you're going to be teaching. Okay, because you got to be able to do that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And that I was going to say the same thing that JB said is we'd have to hear the story to give you, the direct feedback on that, but you can have a story that you use that has the same essence of what you're speaking, but you can add different points of emphasis based on the message you're trying to convey. So maybe your story, if you're in front of a Christian audience, would have a different emphasis than if you're in front of a corporate audience, but you could tell the same story.
Yeah.
Okay,
That helpful?
Does that
yeah,
help?
that's what I'm kind of looking for. I'm getting it more, I'm a little scattered.
Yeah. Well, that might be something if you want to set up a call with us afterwards, as you get the link and maybe.
Oh, I
share
definitely
that
do.
with us. Yeah.
Awesome. Anyone else? Any other questions?
I got another one.
Yes,
I came loaded. Sorry, guys.
that's all right.
This is sort of in the same realm as what I asked about with language and other things, but if you have, part of capturing your audience could be some sort of drama on stage. Chris, I've seen you, for example, have people come up and break a board. I mean, that's a powerful, dramatic moment. It makes a statement. JB, I don't know what you might have up your sleeve when you speak, but there's probably something. If you want to play a moment like that, something that really has some punch and just really just like has a little shock value, is that better at the beginning, at the end,
Yeah.
in the middle, when it connects to some profound message that you want to really resonate with the audience? Like, where do you play that move? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Let me take this one. I'm just kind of thinking of the way that I do my presentation. When I do my keynote, and before I bring someone up on stage, I'm developing rapport with the audience. I think if I went on stage immediately, Dave, and I said, I need a volunteer, people are going to be like, who the heck is this guy, right?
Right.
I build rapport with them first, and I get them moving, whatever, and I kind of build it up. And by the time I bring someone up on stage, it's about a third to halfway through my presentation. But I've already built some rapport with them at that point.
Credibility and trust.
Exactly, some credibility, some trust. And then when I think about my longer presentations, I actually have another element where I bring a second person up on stage, and then they're all raising their hands because they saw the first one. So that's how I do it. I'm not to say that you couldn't pull someone immediately, but my sense would be is if you do it too soon before you build rapport, people are going to get a little bit, you haven't crossed that bridge yet. You haven't built that connection yet.
That
Well,
makes
and the other thing to that, David, to remember is why you're doing it. That's you don't want to do something like just that just to create shock value.
right.
Is it tied to a purpose? Okay. Are you driving home a point? Okay. Are you trying to re-illustrate a point? That sort of thing. So make sure there's a purpose behind what you're doing. I know Chris, when he does his, he's also is tied to what he's teaching at that particular point to kind of illustrate, visually the point that he's making. So as long as you have it tied to that and you're just not, and you're not throwing something in there just to make a, shock value, then it's
Right.
okay. And so, and then basically, so what I'm saying is, where in your presentation do you want to use that to make a point that you're talking about?
Right.
Is that helpful?
Yeah, exactly. My thought was that it is a visual element, but the purpose of doing it is that it would bring them sort of emotionally and physically to where I was in that moment. It would tie them to that exact moment, that exact place, and it would just give them that feeling that they were present as I'm describing.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah. No,
Well,
as long
and
as it
it's-
has a good, clear purpose behind it.
Totally. Yeah. And without seeing it, it's hard, to really say, but
Yeah.
maybe if you want to set up a time with us, we'll be happy to discuss it further with you, David.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah,
Totally.
thank you.
Totally.
Appreciate it.
So Jackie, I see that you just joined us. It's good to have you here, my friend. And I think it's Jackie. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's Jackie. I
Hi,
think
Jackie. So
Jackie's in Arizona, so she may
Got
have
it.
gotten
So-
the time zone.
I think
wrong.
we got the time wrong
I
when
think we
you
got that. I was gonna
told
say, I
me
think we
that
got the
it
time
was
wrong.
6:30 because
Yeah.
I think you guys have been doing this for a while
We
and I
have.
apologize. He told
No
me
worries.
6:30, so
So
I said
Jackie,
6:30, yeah.
I'll
So,
tell you what, we're getting ready to end here, Jackie, but
yeah, I would imagine.
if you signed up for this, you're going to get a recording of this later on
Okay.
tonight. So you'll be able to see that then. So sorry about the confusion on that. And if you have any
Sorry to
questions,
interrupt.
one of the things that we put in the chat box is if you wanted to have a one-on-one discovery call with JB and myself, that link is in the chat box as well. So if you want to follow up with us, you're
Okay.
certainly welcome to do that.
Good, thank you.
All right.
Anza, this is a Jackie that I introduced you to, Anza, by the way, just so you know.
Oh, that's Anza.
That's
Hi, Anza. Oh, good, wonderful.
All right,
Anza.
everyone. Well, I'll tell you what, we want to be conscious of time. We very much appreciate you guys taking time out of your evening this morning to join us. As we said, we'd love to connect with you guys if you have any further questions or if there's any ways that we can help you in your speaking going forward. If you're interested in the Champion Speakers Academy in August, we'd love to have you participate and just go ahead and get on our calendars. And if you want to discuss that further. And then if you've got something, as JB said, that's coming up sooner and you're looking at some potential one-on-one coaching before that, you can reach out to us as well. So JB, anything you want to share as we close it down?
I just want to say thank you to everyone. I appreciate you being here. We love seeing your smiling faces. And yeah, you need anything else from us, contact us, connect with us. And we're here to serve you. Thank you.
And thanks to Anza. Anza's been our amazing
Anza.
person in the
Thank
chat
you.
box. The first time she did that with me, I'm like, man, they have a lot of questions. And then I realized it was Anza with her nimble fingers getting everything documented. So if you want,
That
guys,
helps
you can-
tremendously, Anza.
yeah, you can download that chat box if you go, right? Anza, if you go to the chat box and you hit the three dots, you guys can download before you get off and you can have all the notes in that as well. So,
Awesome. Thank you
Okay.
all. Thank
all right,
you, Anza.
everybody. Thanks so much.
Thank
Look forward
you.
to seeing you soon. Enjoy your mac and
Thank you.
cheese there, David.
All done, man.
All right,
Down.
buddy. Okay. All right. We'll see you.
See ya.